Hi FG viewers, and welcome to this week's episode of The Feed. My name's Una. I'm an editorial associate here at Fairygodboss, and today I'm joined by our very special guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
We are so excited to have you. I think you're going to have really amazing perspectives on everything we're talking about. And I'm actually super excited to get our discussion started today with a community post with an FGB group that Bernadette started to elevate a really special passion project. Synesthesia Me. And Bernadette, do you want to explain to us
this passion project and why you decided to put it on Fairygodboss?
Sure, yeah, thanks. So, Synesthesia Me is the group that I started to go along with a side project that when I meet you, I hear your name and I'm counting how many letters are in your name, and I actually assign colors in my head to the letters of your name. And it's been really hard to explain that for all the years that I've had it. And so my goal for this year was to launch a project where I could show people what it looks like with an interactive tool. And then I put the group up on Fairygodboss because I wanted people to be able to talk about it. I think one of the most exciting things is when people discover that there's a name for this, because if you have it and you didn't know the name of it, it can be really disconcerting to be like, what, not everybody has this? So that's why I started the group.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a really great place for community people who experience this to kind of talk about the experience. And it also is a really great way for you to elevate this tool that you built. And so I kind of, when I've been telling my friends about it, because of course I am, I describe it as like a calculator where you type in your name and the colors that Bernadette sees when she hears or sees your name pop up. And your project has caught a lot of traction. It had its own Twitter moment, and it was the #1 most popular blog post on Medium. So kind of, how did you get started creating this brand for yourself? And what tips do you have for people who have a passion project that they really want to see catch heat?
Cool, yeah. So I'm a list maker. So when I knew I wanted to launch this project, I made a list of all the things that I knew I was going to need. I was going to need a website, I was going to need all the social handles, I was going to need an article explaining it, and I was going to need the tools. So by setting up a launch date, it gave me an internal deadline for myself, but it also gave me a way to introduce it to others. So I even wrote a press release. I'm not a writer.
Yeah.
And there it is. So it was a really fantastic project, and I'm so excited that it caught on. Like, I had no idea it was going to catch on. This was just a way for me to share it. But when it did catch on, it was fantastic to see the reactions from people who were just kind of blown away, which was fantastic for me. So that was fun.
It's very cool, like when you put a part of yourself in something or like your heart into something and you see people respond so well. It must feel really great.
It's been a great week. It's been fun. Thank you.
And it's been on local TV, like it really caught on. So kind of your process for launching this was, you said, I'm going to set a date where I absolutely want to have everything online and I want to start spreading the word. You were kind of strategic about where you wanted to put it, and then you made sure you had all the materials together by that editorial date. Yeah. So you kind of organized, you were strategic, and also you just said, I'm going to do this, like I'm going to have the confidence to go out there and
Yes,
go out
exactly.
there and do it.
You put it so well. Thank you.
Yeah, no, of course. So what is kind of like the most interesting reaction you've had from like a friend or like a family member?
You know what I love about it is it can be very disconcerting if you have synesthesia to see my letters and how I see them. So what I've loved is that people have actually crossed out my, their name in my colors and redid it in their own colors. That's forced them to actually list out their letters in colors, which I'm not sure has ever been a thing, but I've seen so many people doing it. I feel like it's broadened it for people that have synesthesia as well.
That's very cool. Yeah, it's interesting when you see people have common experiences and kind of come together to talk about it, that they have to kind of define that experience themselves. They feel like less alone and more confident and like comfortable being like, oh, this is my perspective on this. And yeah, that's very cool. And this is a visualization of Fairygodboss.
Yes, exactly.
Very interesting. Do you connect the colors with like an emotion too, or is it, so how does that work?
I mean, it's largely based on the vowels. So like A's are red and E's are yellow and I's are white. So if your name or a word has an A in it, I'm more likely to be very interested in it because I think that person or thing has a spark to it, because it's red.
Very cool.
And things that have a lot of ease can be softer and gentler and more optimistic and sunny and bright. So Fairygodboss it starts off, this Fairygodboss starts off optimistic and bright, but it ends with this boss, this heavy, strong confidence, and I love that. We are built on, confidence, this place, and so I love that about the name.
I really, you can see it. It starts very whimsical, then it goes to these blues, very strong color. Very cool. So you have products available, right? We should plug those
I do.
in.
If you go and type in your name and you like it, you could go to my Etsy shop, but I don't want to plug it. I mean, it's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, of course. Very cool. Love to see someone's passion project kind of take off. So with that, I'd love to get started on our second conversation today. So we're going to be discussing a community post. So Bernadette, you want to take it away?
I will take it away. Thank you. So the post starts with the headline, "My company is giving out extra weeks of vacation to some of their new hires. I'm a recruiter at a company and I see all the offers that go out. There are a large number of offers that include a third week of vacation to candidates at the same level as me professionally, whereas everyone else only gets 2 weeks until the beginning of their third year at the company, regardless of their level. And it's excruciating to see people being given an extra week off just by asking for it. And it makes me want to ask my boss's boss, the head of HR, if I can get a third week of vacation too, but I feel it's too presumptuous to ask. Is there anything I can do in this situation? The company is nowhere close to changing their time off benefits anytime soon."
Interesting.
Interesting.
Definitely a
What
lot.
do you think? Tell me.
Yeah, there were definitely a lot of opinions on this one. Very strong opinions.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think for me reading through this, I've never worked in an HR function, but I've always been kind of curious, like what that feels like to really know these intimate details of how other people are relating to the company that you're working at. I would imagine that this is similar to having a direct report where you may know confidential information like that about them. And I definitely wouldn't advise using that confidential information to change something for yourself, at least partially because you never truly know, like, parts of how that negotiation happened or, like, part of how those benefits were gifted. But there were a lot of interesting takes, both from people who worked in HR and people who don't.
Yeah.
So I think this first one's really interesting.
Yeah, and to your point, we have a comment here from Anonymous that said, "I've negotiated for an extra week of vacation. I love the company where I interviewed, but when they told me they only gave out 2 weeks of vacation, I said that I wanted an extra week. As currently I was only getting 3. I was already getting 3. So luckily they agreed. The first job I got after college, I didn't negotiate and really got screwed, but I learned my lesson. Negotiate, negotiate, negotiate. At your yearly review, ask, show your job performance, and make a business case for it."
Yeah, I think something that's so important about this comment is kind of the validation of saying you should absolutely ask, especially if you know it's happening for other people, but like you should make a business case for it based on your own performance versus like something that you know about someone else.
Right.
And I know Sue Geller agreed and said that she works in HR. Don't use the knowledge that you know about someone else to kind of make this change for yourself, but absolutely ask. Like if you have that strong performance, if you think that an extra week of PTO is like something that you deserve because of your results, like women don't negotiate enough and they should be asking, especially if you know like your company has open doors to that. Like it's a possibility it could happen.
Yeah, exactly. And that's funny, somebody else on the feed, Christine Jacques said, "What would happen if you asked?" I mean, it is tricky, but like women need to negotiate more and they need to be okay with doing it.
Absolutely, yeah. It's such a cliche, but I do love the saying, like, the worst thing someone can do is say no.
Right.
Sometimes it's good to be a little presumptuous.
Yeah.
Put yourself out there.
Yeah. Did you see what Marnie Flatt said? I love this one.
Ooh, I think she said, try thinking of it this way. My company has shown that it is open to negotiating vacation time when presented with a good business case. How can I use that information to negotiate more time off for myself?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Knowing that it's possible, knowing that you should negotiate, how can you make your own case? Because, sometimes a lot of people take PTO over things like salary boost, things like that. It's time is money is kind of
Right.
like
And
the saying.
different people value different things, right?
Exactly, yeah. So that's kind of part of you never know what someone like gave up in their compensation package to get something else. And it can be tough. I feel like there are a lot of conversations going on right now about whether or not you should discuss your compensation with colleagues and with friends, you know. Because on the one hand, there's this room for transparency, but there can also be this room for comparison, like lack of engagement at your job because, you know, you feel kind of messed up compared to like what they got, or just like the anxiety or like the self-esteem.
Yeah.
You know?
There's a saying called that says comparison is the thief of joy. I feel like that kind of suits what we're talking about pretty accurately.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's like finding confidence in your own performance, using that confidence to voice what you deserve and what you think you should get.
And to ask for it.
Yeah, but kind of staying on your own path, understanding it's your own journey, and like apples to apples doesn't really exist in the workplace. It says nothing about you. But I think that's actually a really great segue to head into our next conversation, talking about comparing experiences and how everyone has a unique experience. But so for our next conversation, she hit refresh, said ageism. I'm curious to know if anyone has experienced ageism in the workplace. I'm turning 40 this year, and I'm interested to hear how aging might impact me in the workplace. It's something I never thought about until recently. So ageism is definitely something that people face. It's a unique experience, but it's also something that a lot of women.
It's a big deal that really affects a lot of people, and I'm seeing a lot of discussions about it on the feed, and you know, to me, obviously, I'm 47 years old. I've seen it, I've experienced it, and a lot of my friends have dealt with it as well. And I take an approach, and this approach may not work for everyone, but my approach has always been radical candor and just being very upfront about this is who I am, this is what I'm good at, this is how old I am, this is the kind of experience I have, and I always am very clear if I'm interviewing, I want to be sure that they understand what they're going to get from me, but I also understand what they want from me. I mean, and not every job needs to be about moving up. It might just be about, you know, using what you know and doing it really well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great approach. Ageism is interesting because, you know, we saw in the comments that women as young as 30 were talking about experiencing it, all the way up to, you know, women in their mid-60s saying, I've dealt with this for decades, and like, this is kind of what's worked for me. So Bernadette has a really great approach that works for her in terms of being transparent, having this radical candor. And another commenter, username AN, shared that she's in her mid-60s, and she has a piece of advice for women who are kind of facing it in their workplaces. She said, you know, first, try to find a stable organization that fits you well culturally, so kind of understanding saving your money and kind of like laying that financial foundation for yourself in case you do face discrimination, which is obviously not a reality anyone should have to live with, but it's a practical tip from her. And then also sharing that, you know, when you review resumes, so when recruiters review resumes, don't assume that people of an older age have too much experience or aren't eager to learn, and kind of demonstrating eagerness to learn from an organization no matter how far along you are in your career.
Right.
So that, is kind of what she shared.
Yeah. And I love that she said most older workers don't have a problem reporting to younger managers. I just think that's so true. I mean, there's like assumptions and they're not true. I'll work for whoever. I want to do good work, you know, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Have you ever had that experience of reporting to someone younger?
Yeah, sure, of course. And it's going to be, you know, different depending on which, you know, vertical you're in or what company you're reporting to. But sure, to me, age doesn't matter. I really like working with people, and if I can respect them and they have knowledge that they can share, that's really all that matters to me. And I'm lucky that I've been able to work for some really great people.
Absolutely, that makes sense. So it kind of goes back to her point about just finding an organization and a team that shares your values of mutual respect and understanding that everyone can learn from everyone. And kind of teams that elevate that. And I am so glad that more and more women are talking about their experiences with ageism. And I feel like women of older ages are kind of coming through and saying, you know, our careers aren't over, our lives aren't over. I feel like we're seeing this in pop culture a lot recently with, you know, Jennifer Lopez is 50, she just performed at the Super Bowl, or Laura Dern just won an Oscar, you know, at 50, which is very cool. So it's something people are talking about, not just on the FGB community, but like across our country, which is very cool.
The more discussion, the better. The more it comes out, the more people talk about it.
Very interesting. I thought it was also very interesting that Fairygodboss just released some research that suggests that most survey respondents had dealt with age discrimination by the age of 45, which, you know, might not necessarily be the age that you associate with ageism, but it's a serious problem, and it's a problem for women across decades of their career, which is...
It's a shame.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really is. It shouldn't be the case.
A much more widespread problem, I think, than some people kind of realize. You know, it doesn't just happen in the years that you're approaching retirement, but...
Right. And you know what I love is that on Fairygodboss you can talk about it anonymously.
Yeah.
So if you really just need to vent or just say, I think this is happening, what do you guys think? This is where I would come to do it, because I can write things and I know that nobody knows who I am, and I have really high quality, you know, people answering me, which I love. So.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and it's really useful to have people who've been there to give you advice and to feel comfortable asking for it, even on like the most personal of situations.
Absolutely.
But that was, I think, a good note to end on, the value of our FGB community, because that's what we're talking about here today. And that wraps up today's episode of The Feed. So Bernadette, thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your thoughts on these really important topics.
Thanks for having me. This was great. Thanks, Una.
Yeah, absolutely. And please tune in for our next episode of The Feed on March 3rd. Just a reminder that everything we talked about today is in the comments, so feel free to weigh in wherever, you know, something suits you, and we will see you next time.